Okay, this video is going to cover topics in 5.4 and 5.5. So at this point, hopefully you can recognize when you see a number such as 38.22580, any of the digits to the right of the decimal, it starts out as tenths, and then it's hundredths. And you'll notice that whenever we go to the right of the decimal, you'll see that the word ends with the THS. So tenths, hundreds, thousands, and so forth and so on. So in this section, when most of your problems, you found that you could just enter directly into your calculator. But the set of instructions may ask you to either round it to the 100th or maybe the 10th. Oops, that's a T. So let me go ahead and just revisit that first. So if we went with this first one, 100th, the first thing you want to do is locate that position. So we know it's right here. So then we have to, if we're rounding, we need to look at the next number to the right. So that would be this number. And the range is 0 to 4 or 5 to 9. If the number is from 0 to 4, you just leave the 2 alone. If it's in the range of 5 to 9, then that 2 will count up 1. And then everything else will drop. So looking at the 5, that will make that 2 count up. So our answer for this one would be, we just rewrite 38.2. Now we're in a 100th position. And we say, does that 2 stay the same? Or does it count up to a 3? And a 5 will force that up to a 3. So since we're rounding to that right here, we should only have 2 digits to the right. Now, if it was the 10th place, okay, then it would be different. We'd have the number written like this. Let me just rewrite it. Okay, we determine where that position is, which we know it's right here. So now we know we're going to look at this 2, and we can see that that 2 does not make that other 2 count up. So our final answer will be 38.2. Okay, so now in this section, we're going to go into 5.4 is division. Now, let me just show you different ways that you can see a division problem. You could look at a division problem like this, which we've learned, okay? Or you could look at it like this, which would be 0.83 divided into 4.814. Or we've been exposed to see it where it could look like this. You could have 4.814 divided by 24. Okay, so let's focus on this one here. So if we had a problem where we had 4.814 over 0.83, I know at this point you realize that you could easily just enter that right into your calculator and produce a result. And all you need to do is pay attention. If it had several more digits, where are you rounding based on your set of instructions? Okay, well, what if we were to do this longhand, which I know in this chapter you will not need to do it because you do have your calculators you can use for your test. But if you did, let me show you how you handle this longhand. So you would rewrite it as 0.83 divided into, and then you have 4.814. So the goal is you take this decimal and you would have to move it 2 places to make 83 a whole number. And since you did that there, right here, then you have to move this one 2 places. So the new decimal point will be right here when you start working that out. And then when you go through that answer, you're going to end up with a result of 5.8 when you do it longhand. So that's the goal when you divide. If you were to do it by hand, long division, you first have to move the decimal point to create a whole number here, And if you move that one, that means you have to move this one. Even if you were ever working on something that was something like this, and it was a whole number of 4,300, when you move this one twice, then that means the decimal point is there for the whole number, and you would create 2 zeros so you can move it 2 places over. Okay, so all right, so let's get into something that I feel as though it might be useful. I think I'm just going to go to the homework solution sheet and explain the word problems, because again, it's division. All you're doing is plug it into the calculator, coming up with your result, and round into the nearest, whatever they ask for, the 10th, hundredths, thousandths place. So as you see, as you're working on your homework in 5-4, it's going to be simple division problems. Not everything's going to ask you to round, but if you notice when you get down here to number 3, it is going to ask you to round your answer. So sometimes you may have several digits you're going to enter into the system, and sometimes you may not. So you can see this one, when we're evaluating, it gives you the variables. It'll give you a value for those variables, so you're just going to plug it in. Now when you get to number 6 and it's asking you whether it is a solution, so they're saying to you, when we're providing you with this equation, you can see, which is x over 3 equals 2.12, and they're asking you to plug in this value for x. And when you do that, 6.36, which we see over here, divided by 3, does that equal 2.12? And as you can see, it does. So the answer would be yes. This value right here for x is a solution to the equation. All right, now the word problems you're going to get into this section, make sure you just slow down and read them so you'll recognize them on the test or the quiz. But these are all division problems. So the first one's just talking about, a child wearing down 738 crowns by the 10th birthday. And they're saying if out of all those crowns, 64 is considered a box. So that's why you set up this problem to see how many boxes you'll get out of this total number. So, and then it'll ask you to, you can see right here, round to the nearest tenth, and that's why the answer is 11.5. When you get down here, it's talking about people driving, so many miles per year. And we know there's 52 weeks in 1 year. Okay, so we're dividing the 52 weeks to see how many miles people are driving, each week. So that's why we're using the 52, because if you notice, it's saying given that there are 52 weeks in 1 year, about how many miles each week, here's the key point right there, each week is that. So that's why we're using the 52 to divide it out by how many miles have been driven per year on the average. And then again, it's telling you to round it to the nearest tenth. When you get down here, it's talking about a book. The book is saying that there's 75,000 copies that are sold in the first 24 hours after release, if the same number of books were sold each hour. So there you go, we're dealing with hours. So that's why you're dividing by 24. And again, pay attention when you have to round to the nearest tenth. When we get down here to the next problem, it's talking about somebody that purchased 643 bricks. And when they purchased that many, the total expense when they got to the register was $321.50. So they're saying, well, if that was the total price, how much was it per brick? That's why it's a division problem. So you can see over here the final cost, if it's 0.5, then that means it was 50 cents per brick. And you can write it just like this, 0.50. When you get down to this number 11, and I'm just explaining these, and we're going to actually, when we go into 5.5, I'm actually going to handwrite out some problems. When we go into number 11, is talking about the average. And the average, how you come up with that equation, you add each item. And then you count how many is there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So once you're done adding it up and you come up with your total, then you divide it by 5. So when we add these up, we end up with 17.52. And you can see I counted off. There's 5 of them. So we divided by 5, and here's our answer. And make sure you're rounding it correctly. Lastly, it's talking about a food company. A food company will give 25 cents for each box top that a student brings into a school, and each school can earn up to 20,000. And so the question is asking, how many box tops do the students need to collect in order to reach this maximum amount? So all you have to do is divide it. But remember, 25 cents is it's expressed as a decimal in this form, 0.25. All right, so that's all of 5.4. So I think I'm just going to go ahead, and since I'm already at 10 minutes in, I'm going to stop here and make a separate video for 5.5.